Welcome back to Strong Conversations Live here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Coming to you from the Strong Conversations podcast inside the Simpson Strong Tie booth. I am Sam Marcoux, and he is Mr. Jake Shilling from Lennar. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Sam. Thanks for asking.
No, thanks for being here. Now, I would normally introduce you by your title, but your title is very long and sounds very important, and I don't want to mess it up. So I'm going to let you tell everybody what you officially do for Lennar.
Yeah, right on. Well, thanks for that. My job title is the National Director of Value Engineering. So yes, it's long.
Yes.
That really just boils down to we look at homes and try to build them more efficiently to create affordability within the industry.
So that is one of the topics here at IBS 2025 is just efficiency, right? How do we do things smarter? How do we do things faster, but without losing any sort of quality in terms of the build itself? And the fact that you are dedicated to that process for Lennar is kind of shows you the signs of the times of what we're trying to do here. So with that mindset, you come to a show like IBS. What are you looking for when, I mean, it's day one, right? We're going to be here for quite some time, but what are you looking for when you walk the floor and you're meeting with different vendors and different clients with that mindset in mind of this is how we're going to go to market?
Yeah. Good question. A few objectives for us this year was obviously to foster existing relationships with our large vendors. So that's one of the objectives. Second, we're really out there looking for mainly technology and software is
Okay.
kind of where our head's at this year. We do a lot of our own internal estimating. We have a team. I have a team underneath me. Sean Ahern heads that up. We have 4 estimators, so we estimate for the entire country.
Okay.
And so the software we use is Pipeline. It's a Simpson product.
Right.
We've had a lot of success with PlanSwift and Pipeline. We're getting to the stage now where we need to scale.
Okay.
And so we're here to talk to the Simpson team on how we can collaborate with that team to ensure that both of our visions are met with scaling up, estimating, ensuring that we're creating accuracy through takeoffs. But our team do a fantastic job, but I think part of that is just primarily due to the software.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I can't think of a better person to talk to about that and then just this industry as a whole, because you're what, close to 30 years in the industry now?
Yep, 30, yep.
And if you're listening to this or you're watching this, obviously you're hearing an accent from Jake. He's from northern Delaware, right? Is that that's where you were born and raised?
Yeah, just a little south of Palatka, Florida.
So originally from Australia,
That's correct.
and you have worked all over the world.
That's right.
What are the different countries that you have worked in this industry?
Yeah. I've been really fortunate. I've done a trade in Australia. Trades are very prevalent down under. A lot of my mates done trades, so whether that's a sparky, electrician, chippy, carpenter, everyone's doing some kind of trade.
Yeah, cooler names down there than we have here for the trades.
Yeah. We shorten everything.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, well, that goes to efficiency, right there.
that's right. Efficiency.
Right? We can
There
learn.
you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So Australia is a Commonwealth country. I think, and someone could probably look this up. I think there's around 55 to 58 Commonwealth countries globally. Those Commonwealth countries have agreements with one another for work visas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was fortunate enough to get a work visa for England. I had a 2-year visa for England. I had a 1-year visa for Ireland. On the way over there, I ended up stopping in Thailand. It was meant to be for like 3 months. I ended up staying 6 months.
Wow.
Working on huts on the beach in Koh Samui and Penang and different islands, just traveling by myself. So I've been fortunate to see different products, different materials, different structures, work with different people, come
Yeah.
up with new solutions. And, you just think about just the accent piece, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's got different accents. It makes you listen harder to try to understand what they're saying so you can respond. So
Hyper focus. Yeah.
most definitely, yeah.
So all those, I love that you said, oh, I happen to stop in Thailand. It's like, like if I'm driving to Disneyland, well, we'll stop here at this hotel tonight and just stay for a minute.
Yeah, I think that is a byproduct of, Australians love to walk about. And, you've heard Mick Dundee or Crocodile Dundee on Walkabout. Well, a lot of Aussies at the age of around 21, 22, they will go walkabout.
Okay.
Even when we talk about like professional services such as nurses in
Yeah.
Australia, most nurses that travel will go to London to earn the sterling because the dollar is stronger. And so most Aussies have a rite of passage of like going abroad, working for a year or two, and coming back home is generally what Aussies do.
Oh, right on. Well, I mean, and again, it lends itself to what you're doing now for
Yep.
Lennar too, because like you said, you had all these experiences all over the world, different materials, like you talked about, different building practices. We were talking right before we went live on the show about your experience in Thailand and building there.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that like?
It was definitely different. I was fortunate, I guess, as you look at Thailand as a stepping off point, where I grew up in a small town of Taree, of Australia, New South Wales, called Taree. Uh, Taree is Aboriginal for fig tree. It's a very small town, 16,000
Okay.
people, probably only 3 or 4 builders in the town. Everything is done by hand. We didn't have pneumatic guns. Like everything was done by hand. No one cared because the guy next year, he didn't have a gun either.
Right.
And so it wasn't like we were missing out on anything. And I say that because when I was in Thailand, everything was done by hand.
Wow.
Yeah, so my first stop, I was down in the south of Thailand, Koh Samui, and I built a handful of huts on the main beach there for a gentleman that I had connections with through a friend of a friend. And we would cut, it was very dense wood, it was coconut trees. So we would be cutting these coconut trees with like hand saws. They'd be blunt within 3 minutes. And there'd be an army, literally an army of 12 guys off to the side. All they would do was sharpen hand saws. That was their job. And so once one went dull, you'd grab another
Grab
saw
another
and
one.
you'd go again. And so that was a super interesting experience. The one thing that stood out the most there for me in Koh Samui was actually we needed a drill. We
Mm.
needed a power tool. And so we needed a drill with a certain bit on it. And that island of Koh Samui did not have that drill. And so me and the gentleman I was working with, by the way, couldn't speak English. I couldn't speak Thai. We went to another island just across from us, and it was more than a day trip. So the gentleman grabs a chicken and some Thai whiskey, and we jump in a longtail and we head across to the next island, and we spend the night there. And as we're going across on the longtail, I asked the gentleman I ended up working out what he was saying later on, but he was taking the chicken and the whiskey. That was to pay for the tour for 3 days. And
Ah.
so that was the payment. We
It's
went
like a
over there.
bartering system.
Yeah, yeah, it was a barter system. So we had the tour for 3 days. We drilled everything we had to drill in 3 days, and we returned it. So it was just a extremely unique experience.
I love that. Sometimes, Jake, we get into these podcasts and we know what we're going to talk about fully and we have the title ready to go. And sometimes we just get hit with inspiration. I think the title of this, when it's all said and done, is going to be Chicken and Whiskey.
Chicken and whiskey.
That's the name of this title here.
You're making me hungry here, kid.
Yeah. I'm going to try that. I'm going to bring that. See, that's one of those best practices from overseas that we could bring here. I'm going to try to buy something or borrow something this week in Las Vegas, and
Yep.
I'm going to use chicken and whiskey. I don't know where I'm going to get the chicken from, and I'm going to see how successful I am.
You will be just fine. I highly recommend Chick-fil-A.
All right. So we talked about Thailand. You've been all over. We were talking a little bit about Ireland.
Yeah, yeah.
And you had the name for the local economy when you were there. It was right around 2000?
Yes, yes. I flew into Dublin, Ireland in '99. The economy there was just insane. They had the name for the economy at the time was Celtic Tiger.
Wow.
And so that was really just for how robust that economy was. I remember my first handful of days there, and I was looking for a job. Traveling on the Australian dollar was not the best idea. Our dollar was super weak at the time. At that time, they were not on the euro. They were using the Irish punt. And so like $1 bought me $1 bought me 50 cents. And so their currency was twice as strong as ours.
Right.
So if you go get a beer or a sandwich, it's going to cost a lot.
Cost you.
The first thing I needed to do was start earning the punt, which was the Irish currency. I recall going down the street getting 3 or 4 job offers within an hour. It was such a great experience. I ended up hanging out and living with a bunch of Aussies, Kiwis, South Africans, just everyone out there to do a little bit of work. And A few other things that really stood out to me in Ireland. The people were just amazing. Like they'd literally take their shirt off the back to give to you. Like these people are pretty amazing people.
Wow.
Very generous people, but extremely skilled. The work that I'd done there was really around metal stud and metal ceilings.
Okay.
We do a lot of rondo clip ceilings. And the company I worked for, we done Leinster House, which is like their government house, and we also worked on one of the embassies that were there. And the company I worked for, I done all the metalwork, ceilings, and the walls. And there were 13 brothers. Yes, Irish family, big Irish family. 13.
13?
Yep, they'd come in from a surrounding county called County Cork. These guys would drive in every day in this Ford Escort. These things are pretty small to fit 13 guys in. And finally, getting close to that family, you could only get close to them if you would produce good work.
Right.
And so a month or two into my stint with that company, they decided, well, we'll pick that Aussie up rather than let him work the 4 miles to work in the freezing cold. And so sure enough, they showed up. They threw me in the back of the Escort with the 13 siblings, and it just smelt so bad. It was the first and the last time that I got picked up in the Ford Escort. I chose to walk.
I'll walk in the snow.
That's right. Yeah, I'll walk in the rain and the snow. It was better.
So, like you said, very hardworking culture
Super.
there.
Yeah.
And you talked about how the process of work in Thailand. And then you went to England after that, right?
That's
after
right.
Ireland?
Spent some time. I went to England before Ireland.
Before Ireland,
So,
okay.
yeah, I was there for 3 or 4 months. I was working with a buddy of mine I played rugby with in
Okay.
Australia. He was well established there. He had a company. He was doing remodels and renovations.
Okay.
So, yeah, we caught up for 3-4 months. I gave him a hand, earned some local currency.
Yeah.
The main objective is really to work, earn currency, and to travel through Europe. So running of the Bulls, Pamplona, it'd be Oktoberfest in Munich. Like there's these tours and events that happen in Europe that all Aussies want to go to.
Yeah.
So this was kind of the preparation leading up for that, basically 4 months driving around in a van in Europe.
Wow. And what was the main takeaway working in England? I mean, what would you say? You're like, wow, I didn't know that, or I could use that in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my main takeaway, not just from England, but all those countries, was how different the climate was and how you had to design and build, whether it's the material, layering of flashing, everything is done slightly different. And
Right.
It's really to combat those weather, those conditions. Materials were very different as you go into other countries. I noticed that in America as well. The biggest thing here is really the inches and the feet versus metric was the biggest challenge in the US.
Yeah, if you guys could just change that whole metric system
sure,
around the world.
We'll get on it.
It would help me out considerably.
Well, someone should weigh in. Like, how many countries actually use inches and feet, with exception to the United States of America? I bet you could count it on one hand.
Yes, I think you're correct. I was going to try to make a metric joke tie-in, but I'm not. I don't understand it, so I can't. Okay, so how did you make your way to the United States?
What a good question. So I've been asked this question probably 100 times. I've been in the US now for 23 years.
Yeah.
And my response is always the same. There's 2 things that'll bring you halfway around the world. One is money. The second is a woman. And mine was the latter. And so I spent 2 years abroad, like we just talked about, in Ireland and London and Europe. And I came back. And the day I got back, there was the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras in Sydney.
Okay.
It's one of the biggest events outside of Brazil.
Right.
For one of those parties. And so it's a huge event. So I went down with a couple of buddies of mine I haven't seen for a couple of years. And, we're down in Darling Harbour, the main area of Sydney. And there's a group of American ladies trying to get into one of the nightclubs. And we assisted with that. And so,
as gentlemen should.
No doubt. So it was the lady, my wife now, Lindsay Wirtz, now Lindsay Shilling, and her friends she went to college with in CU. They're all from Boulder. They went to college in Boulder. And lo and behold, her friends got busy and left my girl by herself. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know where her college was, or like university. Like she had no clue. This is like 2 a.m.
Wow.
And so I felt bad for her. So I jumped in the car, drove her around for 2 hours until she recognized something. Like this is in a city of 4 million people in
Wow.
Sydney. So she ended up recognizing like a landmark. We ended up getting her to her college. It was Macquarie University, by the way. Um, and then shortly after that, we ran into one another a second time down in Bondi, down
No.
around the eastern suburbs.
How long? How? What was the delta between?
2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was quick. And then
Wow.
so we met again a second time, hung out, joked, and the rest is, how did you say, history.
The rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. So she tried to come back. She went back to school to Boulder. She, funny story, she extended her stay there. She ended up getting an apartment right downtown in Pitt Street, which is pretty high end. Um, and she stayed another 6 months. She
Ah.
decided she wanted to stay a little longer, which I encouraged.
Yeah.
And so she had a place right down in the middle of Sydney. I lived at the beaches. She'd come and spend time at the beaches. We'd stay down at her place. And one thing that stands out with me with my wife, Lindsay, when she was living there, the dollar, the US dollar, back to the dollar, it was over double the strength of the Australian dollar. And so you could pick the Americans out at the bar, like they'd
Yeah.
be shouting everyone. And like, I remember my wife, I bumped into her, like her and her friends were in Pitt Street shopping, one of the most expensive areas. And she said, "Hey, I just got a fantastic deal on some boots. They were only $1,000." And that's at that time, I just didn't know if this was the woman for me.
Right.
Like, I was like, "Hey, I can't do that."
Yeah.
But then she went on to explain, well, that's 1,000 Australian dollars. It's actually 472 US dollars, which is perfect.
Yeah.
And I was like, at least you can justify it. I'm good with that.
There you go.
She spent some time in Australia, went back, finished college, tried to come back to Australia. Our immigration policies are super strong. Like, God bless her. She tried to work in a bar. That didn't work. Had a couple of other jobs that she tried. She ended up doing charity work.
Okay.
And so couldn't make it work. She moved back to the US, and about 4 months later, I moved to the US. I was playing rugby up in Connecticut. That's how I made my way back to the US.
In Connecticut.
Yeah, in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you originally came here up into the Northeast. Then is that
Flew into I flew into Palm Beach, so into Florida, and it
okay?
was only about 2.5 months after that we left and went to Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Gotcha.
Yeah, spent
Gotcha.
6 months up there playing rugby and working in the frigid temperatures. I left Ireland to get away from those frigid temperatures.
Yeah.
So after about 6 months, I was ready to pack up and go back to Australia. Realized that my wife's family was from Jacksonville, Florida. Gave that a try, and 20 years later, here I am.
There you are.
Yeah.
Have not made it back home ever since.
Not for good, no.
Not for good,
visits,
right.
But yeah, not for good.
So I appreciate you sharing that story. That's fascinating. Just that world travel and kind of having that open mind and just that sponge, right? And not that hardened mind.
Most
mindset.
Definitely. It's everyone has a different way of looking at things. It might not be the way you think about it, but it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
So you take all those experiences and you kind of fast forward again to current day here, 2025. Not frigid temperatures. It's obviously climate controlled here in the studio, but outside it's not a bad day either.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in 2025? We're it's late February right now, so we got a little bit of the of experience this year. What are you seeing from just an overall business standpoint for the builders out there?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would recognize affordability is probably one of the main objectives. Interest rates running up. Like, I don't have to go through the reasons as to why. So affordability means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so for us, it's controlling what we can control. Like, we can't control interest rates,
Right.
so that's out of our wheelhouse. So we focus on the structure, the design, the quantities, really important to us. And also what we do is we go through a process, first build, feel validation,
Hmm.
where we have, again, under my team, a couple of gentlemen, Bill Smart being one of them out of Florida.
Yeah.
He will go to all our first builds after we do all the takeoffs, the estimates. We'll comb through the engineering. We're very diligent about having our structural engineering in line, and we will validate the parts and pieces that show up. And so, what that does for us, two things. It'll allow us as a company to ensure that our takeoffs are accurate. If we have too much or not enough material, we can go back and change those formulas so we continue to improve our process as we move forward. And the second thing it does, again, I'm a construction guy. I really disliked when I was in the field racing up to the construction trailer to cut electronic purchase orders. And that is just essentially a dollar amount that you're paying outside of the budget. And so if it's an extra, then it would be considered an electronic purchase order. It would it would burn a lot of time to go and do those administration,
Right.
those tasks. And so we really concentrated on, let's try to get these as close as we can to not to allow our builders to be in the field and be builders and
Yeah.
not ticket takers, not administrators. So I take a lot of pride in that, and the reason for it is it's all about the field. At the end of the day, they're the ones building the home,
Yeah.
and we've got to support them the best we can.
Well, it's interesting too because you talked about in Thailand that the job of a bunch of people was we got to get these sharp. We got to get these
That's right.
blades sharp. That's what we want you focused on.
Yes.
That's what you got to do.
Yes.
And here we are all these years later, and we need the builders to build.
Yes.
We don't need them to do all this other stuff.
That's right.
That's not what their expertise is. That's not
right.
what they're here for. They're here to build. It's almost taking that process a little bit and almost expanding it or scaling it out to a much larger field. But it's fascinating to see those two parallels.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think as the US continues to build a lot of residential homes, I think we're going to find a lot of additional efficiencies. I tell my team a lot of the time, like, don't be scared about making mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is going to make mistakes. That's fine. I think learning from the mistakes is where our heads at. Is let's not do it two and three, or four times. Like, let's learn from it, course correct, and move it forward. I don't sit there and encourage them to make mistakes. However, I do not ride them like Seabiscuit either. Once they make them, we talk about it, we get on the same page, we move forward. And so our relationship is with our team is it's kind of odd because they're all from these different walks of life, but somehow it all works.
Yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, you got Bill Smart on your team, and he went to the University of Florida, so he's not making mistakes. He's an educated man who does things the right way. I like it.
Bill Smart is one of our best, that's for sure.
He's a great guy. I got to know him last year. David Smith, our mutual friend, introduced us, and Bill came and actually spoke to a lot of us at Simpson Strong Tide. It was pretty fascinating to just pick his brain about the process and everything you guys are doing. So, all right, I got a couple extra questions for you here.
Yeah.
We're winding down Strong Conversations with Jake Shilling from Lennar. Is there a project you guys are? I know we talked about what you guys are looking to do here from an efficiency standpoint, but has there been a challenge that you guys have overcome recently that you could shed some light on, or praise your team a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely. So recently, we had some homes going in a division in Florida, and again, you only know what you know. And so when we design these homes and when we schedule them, day one, house number one gets railed up. Day two, house number two gets railed up for the foundation. House number one would pour. So they're sequenced out.
Yeah.
And so what we found, and again, you don't know what you don't know. We realized, and this back to first builds and having someone present at the job, they were doing pours at 4 a.m. And we were kind of, hey, well, why 4 a.m.? The reason they were doing it at 4 a.m., they were batching 5 homes in a row. And so it got us thinking about like batching, using concrete, getting one pump instead of 5 concrete pumps. And so that got us thinking about, can we change our build sequence and our build schedules to cluster some of these homes together? You think about it from a vendor standpoint, particularly in a place like Orlando or one of these areas that have a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
Railing a box up for a monolithic slab, it might only be 3 or 4 hours, but then they got to get in their truck, drive or fight through the traffic over somewhere else, maybe to get 2 or 3 hours to fill out their day. We think it's a better path if we're to cluster them together and they spend the entire day on one site.
Yeah.
We're seeing reductions in concrete, in cubic yards of concrete. We're seeing higher levels of execution in the field. So again, these things come up that we just, again, we don't give a lot of thought to, but once these opportunities present themselves, we're quick to jump on that and
Yeah.
start explore how we can not just benefit Lennar, like
Yeah.
everyone has to benefit out of what we're doing, the vendors, the shareholders, everyone. And so that's more of a holistic approach.
No, that's fantastic too, because like you said, didn't even know that that could be a problem to solve. But once the opportunity presented itself, you took the words right out of my mouth, Jake. You guys jumped on it, and voila, here we are.
That's right.
Well, congrats to you and your team on that. Last question, maybe the most important question of the entire day, Jake. You're going to have a lot of meetings, you're going to meet with a lot of people. This will be the question that tops all of them. We are in Las Vegas. You know, lots to do in Las Vegas. Great food, great shows, lights everywhere, but casinos. That's what everyone knows this for. You got to play, and you talked a lot about money, and you're worldly traveled, and you know the exchange rates for everything here. So we're going to use the U.S. because that's what I know. So I need you to meet me where I'm at in this case. But if you had to play one casino game to win $1 million, what casino game would it be and why?
Okay. So Aussies love to gamble.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you know this. Like, we're close to we're close to Asia, so we have a lot of Asians that visit Australia and gamble. Aussies love to gamble.
Okay.
My pop used to be a bookie on my mum's side, so I used to go to the races with him. Bet on horses. I was pretty young age, but that was encouraged back then.
You got some juice.
That's right. And so, we have a saying in Australia, like, Aussies love to bet on anything that moves, and if it's not moving, we'll push it. And so that's if you hear that, it'll kind of prepare you to understand, like, Aussies love to bet. With that, my game of choice is pokies.
Okay.
Yeah, I love poker machines. I used to play them a lot with my mates in Australia, after football and rugby games, and have a couple of ales after. And there were a handful of machines like that just seemed to produce better outcomes for us anyway. And a handful of my mates would go up and would play the same machine all the time. We'd call it the Commonwealth Bank because just hoping that it would really pay out. But we all know they're not there to make money.
No.
But pokies would be my number one game. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. The international Jake Shilling. Thank you so much for joining us here in Strong Conversations. Thank you guys for joining us and listening to everything that we were just talking about. Stay tuned. We got more content coming. See you guys soon.